All right. This video is about how to mill lumber so it will remain stable, which is what you want to do if your intention is to build heirloom quality furniture. In particular, if you're going to be gluing boards together. You don't want your final product, like a tabletop, let's say. Let's talk about tables. You don't want your tabletop to eventually warp on you and move around. I had a guy call me, I don't know, the last couple of years. I went to his house. He has a company. They've been here around since 1985, and they reproduce classic table designs. They've got a table on their website. It's $36,000. I think their the least costly table for them is around 10 grand, which is about what you'd expect to pay for a decent sized quality table. Real thick, solid lumber, quality lumber, real joinery, that sort of thing. I went to his house and he had a table. When we were having our little meeting, I sat down and put my hand on the table. The whole table moved. He goes, "Well, tables do that." And the wife said to me that they have complaints. Some of their clients are like, "Yeah, we don't know." My tables don't move. I started building tables 25 years ago at least. I don't know a single one of them that worked. So I had to go through this whole process, which is what I'm about to do for you, about the techniques that you want to employ if you want your net result to be a board that will remain stable, highly unlikely to move over time. That's subject to moisture and things like that, but for the most part should remain stable. Now, wood selection is a thing. When you're at the lumber yard, you want to site all your boards. You want to try to pick the boards that are already look relatively stable. Sometimes you don't have that option. Sometimes the only stuff that they have is going to be slightly twisted or bowed as you site it. When you're looking down the board, it might be, So in that case, you have to be sure to purchase lumber that after you're done with the milling process is still going to net you the dimensional lumber that you need to build your project. So you have to think ahead on all of this. Now, you get the boards home, and the first step is going to be preliminary milling, right? So you want to run it through the table saw to get you straight lines, pretty straight. You might have a situation where this thing is, got this crazy bow or curve in it like this. You should have straight edges like this big white thing I have up here, and lay that up point to point, run it through the table saw, take a little bit out, flip it over, rip the other side. It's called straight lining. You want to do that. You want to cut your lengths. I like to make sure that my boards are going to be at least 4 inches longer than my finished length for the milling process. Sometimes you can't avoid snipe. I went over this the other day in a video. Snipe is the divot that you'll see in a board as it comes out of the planer, and that's the operator. That guy's either just being lazy or he doesn't know what he's doing. So when you feed the board into the planer, you want to lift up on it a little bit, and when it's coming out, you want to lift up on it a little bit. Snipe is caused when you let the weight of the board drop, which throws the board up into the knives. So guy doesn't know what he's doing or he's just lazy. And that's not good for the machine or the board. Once you've done your preliminary milling, your first step is face joining. All right? All face joining is running your board on your planer, on your joiner, the top part here, until one side is perfectly flat and straight. That's your number one step. Now, there's techniques to this. And I've tried to do this video a couple times, so there's already pencil lines on here. But you'll see on this board here, I drew a couple pencil lines because the grain on this, it's going down in this direction here. Down on an angle like that. What that would tell you is typically you'd want to run this board into the knives from this direction. Now, there are times when it's telling you that, but that's not the case. And so the super smart way to do is close your eyes, run your hands over the board. So this way is smooth, and this way it's gripping my fingers. And that's correct. That's exactly what the grain is telling me here. So that's your number one thing, is make sure you're running it in the proper direction with the grain. If you run it against the grain, depending on the type of wood, white oak will do this a lot, you'll get a bunch of checking and tear out. So you don't want that. Once you determine that, your other thing is to look down the board. What most people will tell you is if there's a bow to this board, if you sighted this and it was doing this, let's just draw that on here, right? It's kind of a hump here. What most people will tell you is to run it so that the hump is up. So this hits the knives here, you run it through, it hits the knives here, and eventually it gets flat. There are times when you just can't do that. All right, maybe the guys at the lumber yard threw things around. There's a bunch of dents on one side, and you need to use the other side. Maybe there's heavy checks in it. Whatever. You have to think about what your yield is going to be on that board at the end. So sometimes you just have to run it through the other way. It's going this way. You can do it. As I've drawn here, what you want to do is sight your bow there, put a line on each end of it, maybe a couple if it helps you. Set it up in the beginning of the knife here, and just run through that center, keeping these ends up out of the knives until it looks pretty straight. Then you could start from here and flatten it that way. It can be done. Another thing, people tell me I can't do things all the time, and then I prove them wrong all the time. And I'm not doing it to prove them wrong. I'm doing it because I got to do it. This little machine, this is really a furniture maker's joiner planer. It's not intended for giant pieces of timber. As hard as it may be for you to believe this, I have milled timbers in this. I'm talking genuine mahogany, 10 to 12 feet long, 4 inches or more thick, 8 to 10 inches wide through this machine. And the way you do that is you have to set up an in-feed and an out-feed table. So here's my out-feed roller. What I'll do is I'll lay a straight edge on here, right, at this point and at this point, and I'll make sure that it hits this roller this way perfectly and this way perfectly. So when that board comes off of here, it's as if this table is extended all the way out to this point. So you can do it, but you have to set things up. You just got to think things out. You can figure it out. Back to the milling process. Once I get one side perfectly flat, one other tip I do is I'll put these pencil lines on the side I'm face joining, right? Same thing when I'm doing the planing. And as I run it through the knives will, erase the pencil lines, and it tells me what the board is doing. It's going to, because you might not see a twist in it so much, but this will reveal it. Once you get one side perfectly flat, it's face joined, you want to turn it up on end, and you want to join an edge. Right? Now you've got a perfect 90-degree edge here. The next thing that you want to do is you want to run over here to the table saw. I'm sorry, the bandsaw. And you want to set that up so that, double check we got this in the same spot for you. You want to set that up so that you're going to basically remove an edge. You're going to remove a whole piece of material which is going to fall away. Again, still, that dimension still has to be thicker than your final dimension. Now what you have is you have a board that's been face joined, it's been thicknessed on the bandsaw. The reason you want to do that is it's going to make your planing go a lot faster down the road. Now when you do that, this was once a live product, right? This has a bunch of stored energy in it. 85 times out of 100, the next day when you come back, you've had it face joined and you thicknessed it just on the bandsaw. You come back the next day, and on the side that you already face joined, you put your pencil lines again, and you face join it again. And like I was saying, 85 times out of 100, you're still going to see some pencil line there. The board will have, over the course of 24 hours, the board will have twisted again or cupped a little bit or whatever. So you do that process again. Now you've got a board that's going to remain stable. And at this point, you can bring it over, flip the machine around, put it in planer mode, and plane it. And now you've got a board it's perfect. It really shouldn't move on you anymore. And that's that. So once you do that, then you could go ahead and you got your straight edge. Now, it wouldn't hurt if the board has moved and you planed it. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and re-edge, get your edge back to perfect. Then go back over your table saw, get it closer to where you want your finish to be. If the boards are at a thickness that will fit through your planer on end like that, use your planer, set it, run all your boards through, and they're all going to be exactly the same. If it's too tall, like I only have about 6 inches in height here, then what I have to do is I have to get it close, and then I have to finish it off up here. That could be a little tedious sometimes, but it's what you have to do. Anyhow, once you do that, you're gonna end up with a bunch of boards that are all exactly the same size, all exactly the same thickness, and they're all stabilized, and they're going to remain stable for the life of the piece of furniture that you're building. If you end up with a top where you glue your top up and there might be like a bow to it, that's probably because your edges here weren't perfectly at 90 degrees. So it's very important to check everything out as you pull it out of the machine, with your square. Make sure you got perfect 90 degrees before you glue anything up. On this machine, it's like I was saying, I think I said this, it's about 10 1/4 inches wide, about 10 inches really for the planer underneath. It's a great machine. I love having, I know I can get 10 1/4 up top here because I can adjust these blades in other directions here. And that's really nice for face joining lumber, but I'm limited on the joiner. I'm sorry, on the planer. Most planers that you buy, they're like 12 inches wide. That's great. There are machines by different companies. Grizzly Prime makes one. I know Jet makes one. Minimax makes it. I think Laguna has them. If I was tooling up a shop for myself, I would love to have a 14-inch machine. That would be a 14-inch joiner, 14-inch planer. Oh, that would be the dream machine. So anyhow, I hope this helps. Those are the steps. Learn how to read your lumber. Pick the flattest, straightest lumber you can. Make sure it's oversized enough so that in the end, when you're done milling everything, you can net the boards, the sizes that you need to achieve the design aesthetic that you're going for. You have to think all that up front, even before you get started. You get the lumber home, straight line it, cut things to length, face join it, bring it over to the bandsaw, resaw it, let it sit overnight. Come back the next day, face join it again. Now you're ready to plane it. And then you're pretty much going there. Everything's fine. On your lumber, it's always better if you're going to make a tabletop if you can use vertical grain, so you got all the lines up. Most of the boards you buy, they're going to have grain going in this direction, flat grain. So those boards, they have a tendency, here's something I milled for some project. I don't remember what this was for. I think this was for that Conan O'Brien project, where he hired me to build this. I built a little mini sofa for kids for the Santa Monica Library. Go check that out. It's there. It's really cool. Anyhow, so normally you got this flat grain thing going on, so the boards want a cup, and you have to keep that in mind. But again, you put your cup down if it's possible. Run it on the planer. If you have to run it with the cup in this direction, that's fine too. You just have to be aware of what you're doing. But again, once you get a face joined, resaw it, let it sit overnight, come back the next day, you're going to end up with a board that's going to remain stable. When I did my boards the other day for that decking project, it wasn't as important because I'm not gluing those boards together. But if you're making a tabletop or any other piece of furniture where you have, or cutting board, whatever, and you've got to glue boards together and you want something to remain straight and dead flat over the course of its lifetime, which could be hundreds of years, these are the processes that you want to go through. So good luck with it. I hope that you gain something from this video. Have a great day. Be good to help each other out. That's all I'm ever trying to do. And look, I'm not showing you. I just explained it to you. So if you're not a woodworker and you're upset that I didn't show you, it doesn't really matter. But if you're a woodworker, you don't have to watch me do it because I just explained it to you and you know all this stuff already. Have a great day. Catch you next time.